So, hello, Internet. I never really know how to start these things, so I'm just going to jump right in. I haven't gone live in a minute because I've been trying to figure out how to stream to multiple platforms because of this nightmarish TikTok ban that's been getting pushed through. But I just had to talk about this upcoming election because I think at this point most people are really, really disappointed that we have picked two dreadful candidates that very few people are actually excited about to run against each other. And it feels like such a breakdown in democracy that these are the two candidates that are supposed to somehow represent the best that America has to offer. I mean, it is so unlikely that most people think that either one of these candidates really has what it takes to guide our country in the most positive direction. So here we are, and we are watching two candidates battle against each other, both of which appear to be losing their mind and both of which have terrible track records and neither of which anybody seems particularly excited about. But now it seems like Trump has a small bit of an edge in the polls, and I was originally not going to vote for Biden because I have never really liked Biden. If you're familiar with any of my content, it's kind of clear that he is really obnoxious to me in many ways. His policies have been very disappointing, and Biden has been... Okay, I'm going to try and watch chat because I kind of suck at that. So, okay, at this point, nobody said anything. Cool. Hello. So I was thinking that the way that Biden has acted, especially with everything going on in Gaza, and the way that Biden has failed us in so many areas has just been so incredibly disappointing that I just felt like I was going to have to vote third party, especially after the primaries were canceled for North Carolina. And I live in North Carolina, so I felt like that if I went ahead and I voted for Biden after I wasn't given the opportunity to vote for another candidate in the primary, I just kind of felt like that I had to voice my discontent through voting. So I voted uncommitted, I advocated for voting uncommitted, and I have been extraordinarily critical of the way that Biden has been acting. But recently, with seeing how polls are going with Trump and everything, trying to watch this, and seeing how Project 2025 is being concocted, I have learned some very, very concerning things that are starting to shift my perspective. As much as I am furious at the Democratic Party for not giving me a primary, and I was going to urge people in other states to hold their nose and vote for Biden and still vote third party because I'm so angry about losing my primary, when I learned about Schedule F, it changed everything. So Schedule F is a little bit terrifying, and basically it is a way to reclassify government employees who are like career civil servants who might work in like the nuclear sector or who might work in really technical jobs that you need long-term expertise and skill just to keep our country going. Reclassifying these appointees as political appointees would allow them to essentially be fired and would allow us to employ people not based on merit, but instead based purely on loyalty. And so that really concerns me for the future of the country. And I was very, very stubborn about saying, you know what, Trump screwed a lot of things up last time, but there are a lot of presidents that have screwed a lot of things up, and I'm so angry about this primary and about what's going on in Gaza. I cannot bring myself to vote for Biden, who is just doing such a poor job in so many areas and then seems like he's losing his mind. Like, there's so many negatives there. But with this Schedule F, it's something that Trump actually did implement in the final days of his presidency. Okay, let me look and see if people have said things. I'm trying to get better at that. Project 2025, yes, it scares the hell out of me too, Kimmy, and I want to talk about that more, which is why I had to go live. I'm worried for everyone's future, absolutely. And So it's like, do I teach the political party a lesson by saying I refuse to vote for this candidate because you didn't even give me a primary and you took that away, and that's so anti-democracy that I just can't even like allow you to continue to force me to vote for you as the lesser of two evils? Or do I recognize that actually the things that are being put in place are actually a bit of an existential threat? And that's why I wanted to focus on the fact that Trump actually did implement Schedule F, which then was removed by Biden, one of the things that he did that was good. But right now, about 2 million government employees are employees that are merit-based, that are consistent, that keep our government running smoothly. We're talking like the FDA, we're talking people that oversee things. And Schedule F would actually be a way to do a nationwide abortion ban, because you could get people in the FDA to go ahead and decide that they were not going to accept these drugs and they're going to say they're unsafe. There's a lot of different ways to accomplish policy goals through using civil servants. So regardless of what your position on these individual issues are, it is really important to have people that are not yes men to whoever is in charge. And if you use the Schedule F classification, then you can take out the merit-based employment, you can fire people at will, and you can put in people that are loyal to you. And then whichever administration we end up with ends up being the administration that these people say yes to. So like, say for example, you are a meteorologist and you draw the path of a hurricane, and say just theoretically that a president decides to draw on the map in Sharpie and say it's going to be a different path. Well, if you're a yes man, then you're like, yes, that is definitely the path of the hurricane. So in that scenario, you don't have any sort of pushback on things from people that are more concerned with the actual nitty-gritty of their job. And it is important that we have all of these different agencies that run between administrations and just keep things steady in our country. So Project 2025 is a way to put people who are very loyal in all different areas of the government. And right now, there's about 4,000 political appointees that switch every single administration, which is already a lot. But if Schedule F is put back in place, that turns it into like 50,000. And that means that anybody who works on any sort of policy at all, they are actually going to be able to be fired and replaced by people who are loyal rather than people who are chosen on a merit-based system. So this is incredibly concerning to me, and this is one of the main reasons why, despite my anger at the Democratic Party and my recognition at their failures in so many areas, and my recognition at how they are literally supporting a genocide in Palestine. I know that's something people don't like to hear, but I have put out a video where I back that up, and I am going to be using that terminology because I feel like it's pretty accurate. Despite that, it does seem to me that the policies that Trump would put in place around that would actually be worse. Let me check. Someone is saying, oh, lies, but what else would you expect from a Trumper? Lady is fluent in Japanese. That's funny. I kind of like that. Yeah, I can definitely yap, but I spend a lot of time researching this stuff, and I will always let you know when I don't know something. I'll let you know when I'm wrong, and I feel like that's the thing that I can do to help make the discourse a little more healthy. So I did want to talk about some of the things that Trump did that were bad for us, just to remind us, because sometimes I feel like when things are in the past, we can get kind of rose-colored glasses around it. And, Biden is so current in his mistakes that sometimes that can seem heavier. So I did want to go over just a few of the things that Trump did that left a very lasting impression on our country. So he screwed up the Iran nuclear deal, which was super successful up until he screwed that up. We had international agencies that made sure that they were following up on all of the different aspects of the deal, and they verified that they were following up on that. So that's fair. Someone says China tariffs. He says tariffs China pays, but tariffs work against us. That's a really good point too. And actually, Trump has recently promised to put tariffs across the board on all sorts of goods. And yes, a lot of people think that because tariffs are on goods from other countries, that will make people end up, getting more American goods. Unfortunately, the way that our supply chains are set up, we get so many of our inputs to create our goods from other countries that it would really have more of an inflationary effect on a massive amount of goods. And it really just makes the consumer pay a lot more money because companies are going to pass on their costs. If their costs go up, your costs go up. They don't really care. They're not going to eat the costs of those tariffs. So that's a really, really good point. Could tariffs help long term? I think that tariffs are a very interesting and complex thing to talk about. They're not necessarily the direction that I would go. However, I think that there are certain things that could act in a way that tariffs do. For example, because we get so many really, really low quality goods that are made in other countries and hurt the workers of those countries and then make it harder for American businesses to compete with such low prices and basically allow the Walmart models that do eat up local economies, that is a negative. But I do think that there are ways other than tariffs to deal with that. For example, the US has so much power that we could ask that our trading partners have agreements where they have to have better situations for their workers. And so then we won't be getting such incredibly cheap sweatshop items that compete with what we can make and kind of drive the economy in a really weird direction. But sometimes just making goods cost more only causes inflation. And when we look at countries historically that have kind of tried to wall them off from the rest of the world, like when China did, it wasn't great for their economy. So tariffs are not generally the direction that I would go. I think that coming together on policy goals that are good for workers worldwide, that would raise the standard of living and the quality, and then would also give us an opportunity to compete with, fair wages for our workers and everything. Just as a whole would probably be a better way to deal with it, because right now we are living in an economy where workers in America are already struggling so much. And if we just add more of a cost burden onto them, I do understand why there's a certain amount of protectionism that could work in certain sectors, but tariffs would not be my first choice. But I could be maybe convinced in other directions, and I'll do more. I'll do more work on that. What you're paying now with Biden, it's off the charts. Do you mean taxes? One thing I did want to talk about with Trump was his tax policy. So he did something pretty smart with taxes. He actually made all the taxes for the working class go away, but they went away later. So it looked like he gave a tax cut to the working class, but then those were all set to expire. So now they're expiring. But the taxes that aren't expiring, the tax cuts that aren't expiring, are the ones that went to the super wealthy people and are the ones that went to the massive corporations. So basically, he made it look like that he was helping everybody with tax cuts, but the tax cuts that helped regular people were temporary. So it was a little bait and switch there, and now we're left with corporate tax cuts that hurt us. I would guess 80% of people who are voting for Biden are doing so because they cannot live with Trump. Yes, because Biden, oh my God, is so terrible. Like, he does seem like he's not cognitively there very often, which is just so disappointing. He's way too old. I thought the first time he ran, his promise was that he wouldn't run again. But then, look at a lot of these other corporate Dems are such nightmares. It's hard to know, like, who could really fully step up. And whenever you have somebody who's an actual, voice for the people, they're going to get maligned by corporate media until everybody believes that they're a kook. And it's a really big challenge. And it really is showing how having an electoral system that is so dependent on campaign contributions, and the fact that we have legalized bribery through campaign contributions, and the fact that politicians actually spend, I think, like 70 or 80% of their time soliciting donations and like meeting with lobbyists and things like that, instead of actually working on policies that help the people. So we really don't see much of a correlation between policies that the average person supports and what is actually getting passed. So it is so disappointing. Is such a breakdown in our democracy right now. It's so wild. Okay, in a little bit I might try and go live with some people. I just want to get through some things that I wanted to talk about. I haven't tried that before, but hey, might try it today. They're struggling because of Biden's cost. I wish you would be more specific on what you're talking about. If you are talking about inflation, that is quite a problem. And what we have learned, actually, here, let me get some water because Lord knows. So what was it? The guy said Japanese. So basically, so what we've learned is that a large portion of the inflation that we've seen actually happened because corporations saw that they could increase their prices. And the way that we know that is that on earnings calls, they brag about how they increase their profit margins. So profit margins only increase when the extra that they're making increases. That has nothing to do with like regular inflationary pressures. Regular inflationary pressures would not increase profit margins if prices increased and they were only increasing their prices to cover the increased costs. But what we're seeing is that corporations who have a fiduciary duty to maximize profit to their shareholders, which means they are legally required to F over the ordinary person so that they can make more money, they are using this like the inflation was basically an excuse. And so we're seeing percentage-wise that was actually a huge part of the problem and continues to be. And we're also seeing that AI is being utilized in things like housing, which is actually allowing different people to price fix because the AI talks to itself essentially, across the programs. So it will raise the cost of housing in an area not based on actual economic realities, and will instead do it because it can and because multiple businesses might be using the same algorithm that allows them to all price fix essentially their rates without talking to each other. Because if they talked to each other and weren't using AI, that would be illegal. But because they're using AI, and this is kind of a new frontier, we're watching that inflation happen as well. So inflation is a huge problem for us, and it is really making a lot of people hurt. But really the fault is the fact that we are not properly regulating these corporate entities, and that's a fault for across government actors. Everything costs more under Biden. Not hard to see this. And inflation is happening. I'm not denying that at all. And Biden is not doing the things that I would do to address it. And the way that they've been acting with the Fed has been so silly, jacking up the interest rates, which is like hurting us on car loans. And, we have a debt financed economy, so our credit cards are costing more. So we're getting screwed over in that way. And it's like, because the government believes that the Fed is has a hammer, and their only hammer is interest rate, and that's the only thing that they want to do. They have basically just been trying to do that to deal with inflation instead of using other metrics. I mean, we look historically, there are presidents that have actually put in price controls. There are ways to deal with inflation. There are also ways to allow the economy to grow to meet the moment. If workers are able to make more money, Biden promised us the $15 an hour, which we did not get. It's not going to hurt as much that this inflation has happened. And yes, the inflation rates have slowed, but that doesn't mean the prices have gone back down. And there's also a way to basically tax increasing profits. So like, say a company raises their prices because they have to, because their goods cost more. If they do that, fine, they don't get an additional tax. But say they raise it just to increase their profit. You can tax that additional profit at 100% and force them to not want to raise their prices. There are a lot of ways to deal with it, and Biden has not done any of those things, really. So I'm not saying that he is a savior or my favorite. I think he's only running again because of Trump. I mean, who knows what's going through his head? I think that people need to tell him I think people should have said no. And I think it's probably hard once you get that level of power. I think with everybody telling you you're the only one who can save things, I think it probably goes to your head. I mean, who knows? Who knows? He's very old. It's wild. I know that there's a lot of people who think that he's the only person who could have won against Trump. I really thought Marianne Williamson was a good person, but she was so maligned by the media and had a lot of lies put out by her about her. And so it's almost even hard to say that was somebody that I supported, because then you think, oh, I'm supporting some new age kook. And that's not why. It's because she had a lot of understanding of history and liked, Roosevelt era economic policies that are applied a little more fairly, of course. And really did understand economics and had really good ideas about helping the average person. But all we hear on corporate media is that she's some new age crystal lady kook, which wasn't true. He isn't running the show. Clinton and Obama's surfing somewhere. Haven't you seen the pictures? And Clinton, I mean, I don't like him either. I didn't even vote for Hillary back in the day. I voted third party then too. I am very much not a Dem stan either, but This Project 2025 and this Schedule F is a way to put in loyalists who are not entering into our system based on merit, and that is dangerous. And that is on a different level of existential. I've always been very, very quick to go against the mainstream opinion. And also, I really, really hate how we're always told that every election is existential. I feel like that has been used against us so many times that I really was almost of the, well, just let everything burn and let it fall apart, because you are basically manipulating us to force us to vote for bad candidates instead of getting better candidates. But if we really do tear apart the government in a lot of these different regulatory agencies and agencies where people do need expertise, that could be something that would be really difficult to come back from. And we are the oldest democracy, and democracies have crumbled before. And I really am concerned at the idea of tearing into a lot of the different apparati that told Trump, hey, that's illegal, you can't do that, So, and it's not because I think Biden is so great. There's a few things that he's done that I like. He did some good things for labor. I was very impressed with that. He actually, or his labor board. So if a company does something that is some sort of illegal union busting activity, if they do that, then you can basically take a vote, and if most workers want to unionize, then you can kind of skip the union vote essentially and just be legally recognized. So that is massive. Because if we look at the time period where more working class people were happy, it was when more people were unionized. And I know that you can find examples of certain unions that exercise unnecessary power. I know that. I know you can find corruption anywhere. I know that. But we have these corporate entities that are so powerful, and we have workers with no power whatsoever. And the best way to balance that, the best way to be able to negotiate higher salaries so that while they're making stupid money and we're making crumbs, that we can say, no, we're going to have a piece of that, additional profit, then that is formed collectively best through unions. So, when we look at Boeing, so the guy who's running Boeing, right, which it makes it scary to fly these days, right? His salary was increased this year by over 40%. So it's like they're under investigation, right? Like we have doors ripping off in flight. We have like lies all over the wazoo. Like Boeing is such a nightmare. We have the weird thing with the whistleblower. I ain't gonna say anything about that, but it was weird. We have so many negative things about Boeing specifically, and you're gonna raise his costs over 40. Not cost. Cost to us. His salary over 40% this last year. That's insane. And yet workers are not seeing any of this. So this inflation wouldn't hurt us so incredibly much if we were all, if the rising tide was affecting us all. Here, okay. What tax cut has Biden done? Everybody always is trying to do tax cuts, but I think there are better things we can do right now. Although working class tax cuts, all about it. Because I think it was Warren Buffett, it was one of the billionaires. He came out the other day and he said if 80, I think it was 80, it was very few. It was not many corporations paid taxes as they should, then no American would have to pay a single dollar in federal income taxes at all. Now, I wasn't planning on talking about this, so it's in that realm. But basically, he made it very, very clear that because corporations are not shouldering their tax burden, we're shouldering it. And also, when you look at people that are mega super wealthy, most of the really, really rich people don't really work. And so income is taxed much, much more than like gains in the stock market, gains through speculation, just having and hoarding wealth. So basically, if you want to do a tax cut for workers on the lower end, sign me up, put it on the corporations. They can handle it. They're making record profits. I'm all about it. Okay, let's see. We don't want you, then spend your time elsewhere. Dems don't want you. I'm sorry. Hey, I'm telling people to vote for Biden, but and maybe the thing is that when I first got into politics, I spent a long time finding out that beliefs that I held were incorrect when I did more research. And I'm like, oh my God, how do I avoid that as much as possible? And I started to realize that the best way was to see that I was very fallible, to try and prove myself wrong, and to not just assume something was correct because of the political group. So it's not that I'm against Democrats in any way. When I say Democrats, I'm talking about the corporate ones that are failing us, the politicians. I'm not talking ever about the voters, Democrats or Republicans. A lot of times the voters mean well, and it's the politicians that are lying to us. And oh my God, if we listen to the wrong person or believe someone who's lying to us, that just sucks. It's not that I think that I'm not putting the onus on the voters here. So I'm sorry that what I said felt triggering towards voters. That's not my intention. But yes, the Democrats that are currently in government, I'm annoyed with a lot of them. And I can give you specifics. But I also don't really, I don't need to be popular either. You're on the spot with the legalized bribing. Now it goes to the Supreme Court. Yeah. And here's the thing. So Trump, appointed a couple Supreme Court judges, which is why the whole Roe v. Wade thing happened. We have a very, very conservative Supreme Court right now. And it's very interesting, too, because they call themselves originalists. But if they actually went with an originalist view of the Constitution, then they would knock down the TikTok ban, because the TikTok ban is unconstitutional, because some of the politicians who actually passed it literally said that they were doing it partially because people were talking about Gaza and Palestine, and they were saying that it was like, anti-Israel and all that stuff. So basically, you're not allowed to do content-based restriction except in a very specific set of things, including like, threats. And I don't want to go through all that because maybe that could cause the algorithm to think I'm actually saying these very bad things. But unless if it's on this very narrow list, you're not allowed to do content-based legislation that limits speech, and that is what this TikTok ban is. However, I don't think the Supreme Court is going to step in, because I don't think they will, and I could be wrong, but they say they're originalists, and I see them not interpreting things in an originalist way all the time. I think that is a convenient excuse in some areas. It's not even very consistent. Our government can't run with the stranglehold of Israel and other big corporations. Yeah, I mean, we do definitely have a stranglehold through corporate interests. And when we look at the amount of money that has been poured into government races by PACs like AIPAC, it's wild. And it's also interesting because it's difficult to talk about that, because you certainly don't want to feed into any sort of anti-Semitic trope. That is very important. But it is also a reality that is a very powerful institution that puts a lot of money into elections. So it is challenging. And we watch our politicians respond to that and not be willing to put any sort of guardrails on our policy in our Middle Eastern policy. So when we look at, presidents historically, we've actually, oh my gosh, something happened above my head and I don't even know what that is. Hannah sent some, oh, thank you, Hannah. I'm still learning all this. I see someone said we live in a republic, not a democracy. We're going to get to that too. We're going to get to that. But basically, when we look at some presidents historically, we look at Bush and we look at Reagan, and both of them were like, hey, Israel, what you're doing, you can't do. So stop. And they immediately stopped. So Biden definitely has the power to be able, there's a lot of people that didn't like me talking about that, but that's okay, because basically I'm here to just give the information as I see it. And I'm going to be as direct and honest as possible, whether or not I think that is popular, because I think that's what's missing from mainstream media. So basically, we have seen presidents enact policies that have helped constrain some of the excesses of the Israeli government. I'm not talking about the people, I'm talking about the government. Any government can do things that are worth critiquing, our own and any government. And that does not need to be conflated with any sort of belief about the people that live in that government. I just want to be super clear on that. But historically, presidents have been able to constrain certain things that Israel, the government, was doing that was not good. And Biden is very half-heartedly being like, please don't do anything. But it's like he's not flexing the muscle, and we give so much money. We have so much support, so much military aid that we send. It is 100% possible for us to exert more influence there. And with the amount of money that is being given to our politicians, we see them very, very hesitant to do so. And we see the ones who speak out are getting tons of money given to their opponents. So it's hard. It's definitely hard. Okay, let me go and see. Someone's saying they should help with school and medicine costs. Yes, and they need to do more, because we were promised student loan help and we're getting it on a much smaller scale. And I feel like there was quite a bait and switch done with that student loan situation. I'm not very happy about that. I felt that the first time they went to court, the argument that they used was not as strong as the argument they used the second time. So I felt like that first one was kind of designed to fail. Now, this is kind of my theory, and I don't really have proof of that. But the second time they went back and they asked for much, much less relief instead of just asking for the same amount with the better legal argument. So to me, it kind of seemed like they were asking for a lot more to look good, knowing that they'd likely get turned down. And then they went back with the better legal argument and asked for way less. And they're like, hey, what can we do? I don't know. That's just my little opinion on that, because I'm disappointed, because student loans are really, really tough and I'm paying them. So I guess I'm biased, but that it doesn't help with the inflationary things. And then I have to spend hundreds of dollars to, give to the government right now for these student loans. So I said to go back to the republic versus democracy. So we're actually both. We are a representative democracy. If you look at the legal, I won't get too deep into this because there are videos all over the internet that go real deep into republic versus democracy. And like a true direct democracy would be like, hey, do we want to put a stop sign here? Let's have literally every person who lives here vote. And that would be clunky, and that would really not work very well. So a republic is a more representative thing where you're like, electing your representatives and everything. But we are definitely not only a republic. We also are, it's both. It's definitely both. And I think that a lot of people say that we're a republic, not a democracy, when they are feeling like the argument that the will of the people should be upheld is not in their camp. So they're like, hey, sucks to suck. But legally, it's both. Vote for Trump, you genius. I understand why people initially wanted to vote for Trump the first time he ran, because he was telling all of these politicians, hey, you're lying, you're bought and paid for. He was saying that he wanted to fight for the working class. He said he wanted to bring jobs back. Now, the interesting thing was a lot more jobs have been brought back to America under Biden than Trump. In fact, we outsourced a ton of jobs under Trump. So a lot of this was rhetoric. But the first time around, we didn't know that. And so the first time around, we did not realize that Trump was actually going to govern in a way that was really best for the billionaires and the corporations and actually wasn't good for the worker. But we know that now. So he also cut access to food stamps. I mean, he did a lot of things that were not good for people who are struggling. I mean, he suggested injecting bleach to cure COVID. He withdrew from the Paris Climate Agreement. The tax cuts went to the top. The separating kids from their families at the border. I mean, there were a lot of things that he did that were not so great. And it's so interesting now because a lot of people talk about how Biden has these open borders, but he really kept a lot of the same policies in place. And he actually kept this, gosh, this is so long since I talked. Was it Title 11? Oh my God, please somebody remind me. When it comes to numbers, sometimes I can get things where basically it didn't allow anybody to claim asylum because of the pandemic. Can somebody remind me of the name? Oh gosh, people have been talking. Oh man, I'm so way far back. Title 42. Yes. Okay. Thank you. Yes. Thank you. It's been so long. Okay. Since I talked about that one. Yeah. When it comes to numbers, man, I told you I will always let you know when I don't know something. That is something that media does not do and something that we need in our country. So basically, he actually kept that in place until a judge actually removed it, saying it was unconstitutional because the Constitution says that you have to abide by international law. And international law says that you have to accept, you have to at least consider applications for asylum. So throwing people out without allowing them to claim asylum is against international law and thus against our Constitution, which says that we have to abide by international law. So it really hasn't been a free-for-all at the borders. In fact, if you look at how many people that Biden has been deporting, it's actually more. So this is just, it's just misinformation. Some people say that I don't know what I'm talking about, and I don't know everything, but I know that we do not have open borders. Woolworth incentivizes employees paying low wages. I don't know what that is. You can, though. Immigration is a thing. Not sure about that. You can't just go live in another country. Work in the industry. It will not hurt. I can tell you how much it. Wait, what wool? In what industry? Okay, y'all are talking back and forth. The borders were open to get voters. So it is really, really hard for somebody to get away with voting when they're not legally a citizen. And the punishment is very high. The checks are significant. And the impact that one vote is going to have on an election is very low. Now, voting is very important because if we stop voting because we're so annoyed by the fact that everyone they're putting up sucks, then it just lets them put up more bad people. But that's not the way. Trump did none of those things. The things I just said that Trump did, those are factual, I promise. If you can give me some specifics, I'll address any specifics. Not taxing tips will hurt workers. I as somebody who is in the service industry, I really wish that tips were not taxed. That would be super nice. I would like taxes to be lower on the working class as a whole, but here we are. Okay. Someone said, no, he didn't, don't lie. That's your whole personality. So my thing is that I will be wrong sometimes. My core thing is I'll be wrong sometimes, but I will always give you, to the best of my ability, what I have gleaned. I will try to prove myself wrong, and that's the best way I can try to be wrong less, and that's the way I can be more truthful. I do not have a super strong party allegiance, which some people have not liked in this stream, but I think that helps me be as truthful as possible. And I understand that it's really, really difficult to hear somebody say something that is different from what you believe. In fact, from an evolutionary perspective, we feel attacked. We feel like our identity is attacked if somebody comes and gives us a different perspective. And that is really, really hard. It is so hard to change your mind. It is one of the bravest things in the world to be like, okay, I changed my mind, or I was wrong about that, or maybe someone lied to me about that. So that is really, really, really hard. And so for the people who feel like the things that I'm saying are propaganda or things like that, it's very understandable that you're having a strong reaction if you have been hearing something different. And I'm more than happy to get deeper into any topic and let you know why I have changed my mind or reached the particular position that I have reached. Because sometimes I just say the things that I'm thinking and don't explain everything behind it. But I'd be more than happy to get into anything. For example, so during the pandemic, I read a scientific paper that talked about how the lab leak theory was impossible because of the way that the virus mutated. We could look at its genetic code. So I'm like, okay, impossible, right? Years later, we find out that it is very likely that it did indeed leak, and that it wasn't designed necessarily, but it was made to mutate, and so that was what helped it grow. We don't know for sure. I don't think our government wants to know for sure, because we have the whole gain of function thing going on, which it makes a lot of money, and a lot of people are very attached to the idea of mutating viruses to help predict how viruses might mutate and save us from it later. But it's also is dangerous because we have tons of lab leaks all the time. But that's just an example of something that I just immediately believed, and that turned out to be something that I didn't need to immediately believe. So, there are, wow, a bunch of people started talking. Okay, I keep trying to go back, and maybe I just need to keep up with this. Okay, let's see where we're at. Oh my gosh. Okay, let me go all the way to the new and go backwards again. funny gain of function just before they wanted to get someone out of office. Gain of function has been a thing, although they've kind of changed the definition so they don't have to call it that. Blah, blah, still talking, no point. I'm live streaming, so that's kind of what I do. I talk. So funny. So you read a paid scientist paper and now you believe. No, I'm saying that I read it and I believed it incorrectly. But it was a peer-reviewed scientific paper, so I had a reason to believe that it could be accurate. So what I'm saying is that it lied, or maybe they believed that and they were wrong. But either way, I was misinformed to the possibility that it leaked from lab. And my perspective, my personal opinion is that it did. But I also cannot say that with 100% certainty. So is that more or less than 5 minutes of nothing? I had someone who got really mad that I said I wasn't for the Dems. So yeah, the tides have turned. Whoops. Thank you for admitting that. Oh, absolutely. That's what I do, man. That's what I do. Yeah, exactly, Scott. I'm saying don't take things at face value and do more research. But what I'm also saying is try to question your own assumptions. No matter how much research you have done, new things can come to light. And also it's so easy to get stuck in a thought bubble. And it feels good to have a bunch of people agree with you. Honestly, it feels great. But that is not the best way to grow and be able to get things correct more often. The best way is to find where you're missing something, where you're wrong. And we are all fallible and we're all going to be wrong and we're all going to believe the wrong thing sometimes. And that's not a personal failing. And I think that different perspectives and being able to talk and disagree is so important for a healthy democracy. So I really appreciate the fact that people are fired up about this, whether or not they currently think that what I'm saying is on point. I hope that what comes through is that I am, to the best of my ability, being honest with you, which is what I feel is missing from media. Such a nice way of saying I'm selling out America for Joe. So yeah, I hate Biden. I don't know when you joined the stream, but I feel like you've been here for a couple minutes at least. I was very anti-Biden. Biden was, even before he was elected the first time, I was very, very against him. I went and passed out flyers about what a creep he was. And yeah, not my dude. Not my dude at all. But of course, we've ended up with two people that I think very few people really think are the best representation of what our country has to offer. And so my concern with the direction that things are going with Trump is that we are looking at somebody who is prizing loyalty over the ability to do their job. And you might like that with Trump, but say he puts in place this whole like Schedule F and gets rid of merit-based employees and puts in people who are loyal, the next administration can do the same. And then you end up with yes people who pretty much only respond to their current administration. That's not good for our country overall, because I don't want the people in chemical labs to be obsessively following their political stand, Like, I want the people working in our dangerous areas to be the experts in the field that are able to have some sort of consistency across governments. So I literally was not going to vote for Biden until I heard the details on this Schedule F thing. And then it is with great disappointment and sickness in my heart that I feel like I'm going to end up doing that. And I don't like it. I don't like it at all. I wish that, Karen, I wish that Biden would rest and enjoy his life. He looks like he's about to keel over. He's not well. I agree. He needs to retire. That's, oh, Lord. Yeah. You vote for Joe in this world, we'll see a civil war. We don't want that. we want to learn how to talk to each other. Okay, we'll go back to Schedule F. Don't vote for him, it's elder abuse. I mean, the people around him, his advisors, it really is. Like, that man needs to be in a home. Agreed. But here we are. And the Dems have gone crazy in a lot of ways, but let me talk to you about Schedule F and why it is so concerning, because I have people asking about that, and that's really my big concern. So there's about 2 million government employees that do things that are very merit-based, that are regulatory. And I know that that's such a dirty word and like regulations aren't sexy, but I mean, Joe Rogan himself talked about how you really didn't want a house that didn't have proper regulatory coding, because it'd like catch on fire and you'd die. And then we'd have to be experts in everything, because we'd have to essentially regulate everything ourselves and be the wild, wild west. It'd be a nightmare, right? So we need people who are just really, really smart in their field. And Schedule F allows about 50,000 government employees to be reclassified to where they can be political appointees that don't have to be appointed based on merit. They can be appointed based on loyalty. And if you think that everything that Trump has going for him is the best, then you're going to like that while he's in office. But he leaves, Schedule F is still there, and then you have the next person, and maybe you disagree with all of their policy goals, and they get rid of these 50,000 people, and they put in people that are loyal to them. And just the turnover, first of all, of 50,000 employees every couple years would just create seismic shattering in our government functions. I mean, basic things like getting, licensing, getting birth certificate, like you're worried about the border, like all these different things are going to be more fractured if we constantly have government employees getting switched out. And Schedule F would allow that to happen. It would allow basically presidents to pass laws without passing laws. It would allow them to bypass Congress, because they could get their yes men and all these different regulatory agencies to just say, yeah, that's unsafe. And then poof, it essentially be the law of the land. So it is a big concern. And that is the main reason that I went from where I was wanting to vote third party, because I couldn't bring myself to vote for Biden, to where I'm feeling that I'm going to have to and cry while I do it. Yes. Okay. So we have some good points of some things that Biden has done well. The PACT Act, yes. The burn pit bill, that was fantastic. Making sure that veterans were able to actually get care for the toxic burn pits that they were exposed to, being able to have that health care, capping the cost of insulin. That also shows that other things can be capped, but it is a start. It is something that is good. So there are things that Biden has done that have helped, like I was saying earlier, the things he's done for unions, absolutely fantastic. And so there are certain areas where Biden has done things that are helpful. Someone's saying, what felony did Biden commit? Yep, we have all the felonies rolling in for Mr. Trump, which is also just the state of politics, man. And someone, a travel agent who loves, said third party is just nonsense because they will not win. Yes, that was my protest vote, because I was mad because they canceled the primary in North Carolina, and primaries to me matter so much. So I was very angry that my opportunity to vote against Biden was taken away. So I'm like, oh, and then you just expect me to like fall in line and do whatever you want. So it was throwing my vote away knowingly, and this new information is just making it so I'm feeling like it actually is going to be necessary, unfortunately. So let's try and catch up. Someone's saying that taking the classified docs as VP. Yeah, the classified docs, Biden was not very smart with that. He did not handle them well. The big difference in the classified documents case is that when Biden had the classified documents, he turned them over. And when Trump had the classified documents, he tried to move them. He had his lawyers write an affidavit saying that that he turned them all in when he hadn't. He there was a thing tampering with the cameras. He literally tried to cover it up. So they gave him a while to return them. The main issue with that was all the stuff that he did afterwards and not wanting to give the documents back, not the fact that he was stupid with the documents. And first of all, go ahead, charge Biden. Yeah, fine, accountability. Oh my gosh, I cannot keep up. Okay. Verify to continue. Why is it making me? We've detected inactivity. Wow, I get some water. Okay. All right. Where am I from in NC? I was born in Charleston, but I'm in Asheville right now. He declassified what he took, and Biden declassified them. He did not declassify them. There's actually a recording. It's pretty funny where Trump's like, hey, and he rustles these papers in the recording. And he's like, so I can't really show these to you because they're classified. But basically, you'll see that none of the decisions I made were my fault. They wanted to do it. That's a gross oversimplification, but it kind of hurts him that he's on a recording where he's saying that he knows they're not declassified. But anyways, that was funny. He claims that he declassified them just by taking them. That is not a thing. There is an actual process for declassification that he could have done that he did not do. Okay. I need to skip back a little bit. Biden had some docs for 20 years. Like I said, go ahead. I'm not saying you shouldn't go after him. Go after him. What I'm saying is that Biden actually alerted them when he found them. So he was stupid. He was doddering about it. He's losing his mind. He had them. But when he found them, supposedly, he reported it on himself. Whereas Trump never reported that he had him. The archivist came after him, was like, hey, we're missing some documents. Trump's like, nah, man. And then he's like, oh, well, here's a couple. That's all of them. The archivists are like, no, it's not. He's like, yeah, no, definitely all of them. And then go back and forth with all the lying and trying to cover it up. So that's where he ran into trouble. Now, do I think anything's going to come of that particular case? Probably not, because Judge Eileen Cannon has already had such pro-Trump rulings that it's actually been overturned by other justices. And justices really don't like to overturn each other's rulings because they like to have, it's almost like the thin blue line, except justice style. They really don't like to overturn each other's rulings. So even though it is, oh my God, the evidence for that case is overwhelming. It's hard to see that he wouldn't be decided against. At the very least, she's going to help him put it off until after the election. If he's elected, then, it'll stop. And I mean, he's definitely not going to be really penalized for much, I don't think, from that case, because there's so much judiciary discretion. I said that very poorly. Judges have a lot of discretion. So basically, that one, he has a friend. He has a friend in that one. The DC case is interesting for sure. And then the Atlanta case is interesting because he can't be pardoned for that if that is decided against him. But of course, we have all the weirdness with the judge and her weird, affair. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. So let me catch up. I can't. Okay. Oh, you have not, someone's saying I have not named any policies. So I'm going to scroll forward so I can have a head full of dead tell me what policies he's asking to see. He says, I do have one thing in common with Trump. We both love how dumb the people who vote for. I hate to say negative things about the voter, though, honestly, because I just feel like that it's very, oh, not talking to me. Okay. Well, I want to give people ample opportunity to insult me. um, that's not what happened with the documents. You haven't done any research. I've done a lot of research. But I came on to talk about something specific. So I'm sorry if I'm too general. Which with the whole Trump case, like that was a huge, like a very quick skipping over of something that is very, very in depth. In fact, on my TikTok, I break down in much more detail about the different cases, and then I have some full live streams on YouTube where I go back and forth about all the different charges, the merits in them, all that stuff, and had notes to make sure that I didn't say anything incorrectly, because I do want to make sure that I'm adding to good information and not leading anybody in a negative direction. So let's go. It's so funny how this live stream, it has swung back and forth between people who very much agree with me and very much disagree with me. And it's been like back and forth, and it seems to come in like clumps of people. And honestly, I think it's all so, so good, because I hope that one of the things that I can offer in my little way with the world is to maybe facilitate discussion amongst people that disagree in a way that's ultimately better for our democracy. Because despite the fact that I will constantly critique our government, because I believe that we can do better. And that's how I show my love. That's how the people who founded America said, hey, we don't like our government, and we think we can do better. They believed in the future of America. And I deeply believe in the future of America. So I think that by criticizing what is going on and believing that we can do better, and believing that we can take things in a new direction, and believing in the people, that we can have something that is beautiful and that can be the greatest it's ever been, Someone said I'm a researcher. It's something I do for fun. And for many years, I would go home and I would research things to relax, because I'm a weirdo. And politics was one of my favorite things to research. And I never talked to anybody about it, because I'm like, that's a great way to have people you don't even know want you, and like in this climate, no way. And then I started predicting some things, and then I started seeing how a lot of the people that were talking about politics were talking about it in a way that I felt was trying too hard to win. It was not healthy, and it was a little toxic. And I'm like, man, I just feel like that I might be able to help the discourse in my own baby little way. And so I started talking about it, and then I started to realize that the people that are insulting you are only insulting you because it's really scary to have ideas that conflict with your own, come up. And we do very much identify with our ideas. And so I think that is just kind of a part of the process. And I think that, the more we could all get comfortable having discussions where we're not always going to come together on everything, we can get better at coming up with the best solutions amongst ourselves. Okay. Researching is best. Don't let anyone tell you it's bad. Oh, it's my obsession. I will do it for fun. I got 5,679 cents to fit. I don't even know what that is. You are voting for someone who has an open border, high inflation for mortgage rates. I actually already talked about both of those things, the border thing and the inflation for mortgage rates. But you know what? Let me really quick go over. So I'm really upset that the Fed jacked up the interest rate so much, because it did hurt regular people with, their credit cards, with mortgages, with things like that, with, with rentals, just everything. It really did hurt the average person. Not rentals, I'm sorry, with like car payments, things like that, not rentals. Rentals is another issue that has been hurt by AI. another thing. But that is partially because, Biden didn't take more aggressive actions to deal with inflations, which I think would have been appropriate. Like a windfall profits tax, where if a company raises their rates because they have to, because the cost of their goods cost more, fine, whatever. But if they raise their rates purely to make more money, then that gets taxed. So it takes away the incentive for companies to use the inflation narrative as an excuse to make more money, which turns out that was actually where a huge percentage of the inflation came from. So instead, the Fed was left kind of on its own to try and deal with inflation, and the only thing they do is play with interest rates. So they jacked up the interest rates. It hurt the average person, and it really wasn't the best way to deal with it when there's so many other ways that could have been, implemented. Sorry, I need water. I'm talking to them. There's so many other things that could have helped with inflation that we did not do. So that is somewhere that Biden fell short, because he could have been more aggressive in ways to deal with inflation, and instead he's just like, Fed, deal with it, and that's what the Fed did. So and the borders aren't open. Seth believed that they could do better after believing in his government. I'm not sure. Oh, we keep going. Do you wear Gap? I really don't like shopping very much, so I've had this shirt for like years. I like research more. Oh my God, 30 new messages. I keep not getting to catch up. I'm sorry, guys. I'm trying. Okay. So a lot of people that I know and that I respect their opinions of, originally when Trump came onto the scene, listened to him critiquing the way that government was being run in a really corrupt, terrible way. And oh my God, I respect that so much. Like, I get why people were drawn to that, because government has become very corrupt because of unlimited money in politics, among many other things, But oh, and yes, I'm definitely a Beatles fan. They were the first music I ever listened to, and I listened to it on vinyl. I know, I was so lucky. Sorry, totally on a tangent. Seth Rich, is that the guy who owns Google? Oh man, usually I keep up with a lot of billionaires, but thank you. I appreciate that. Like I said, I will always be honest. I'll let you know when I don't know. And that, I feel like, is part of my responsibility, to share about the things that I don't know, because then I'm able to then I'm able to grow with y'all, and I spend many, many hours doing research because it's fun. But Seth Rich, with the Boeing dude. Oh, dude, that was sketchy as hell. Oh, okay. Here are the things I'm bad at. I'm really bad at names and numbers, but facts and and policy and the way things fit together. Those are the things that are stronger for me. But when it comes to people's names, I definitely get confused, and I flip numbers all the time. So thank you for helping. Wait, somebody's saying it has to do with the DNC? What? He did? Really? Oh, that's not the Boeing dude? Look, I'm so angry at the DNC because they canceled the freaking primary in North Carolina. The DNC sucks. They are a huge part of the problem. They are also anti-democracy. Murdered after the so-called. Okay, I'll look into it. Here, let me write this down. All right. Okay. He has a really uplifting speech. All right. Yes. The lack of primary in North Carolina was why I was going to cast a protest vote and vote third party until I learn more about Schedule F. And I do feel like that could actually start hacking away at our government institutions. And I have always hated so much that politicians use this existential threat thing against us. That sucks. But in this case, this is highly concerning because I want people who are merit-based in these important regulatory agencies. Trump never talks about policies. He doesn't, but he's talked about some very concerning policies, and whew, Oof. All I can say is watch Biden speeches and Trump speeches. Tell me which one spreads hope. I have to say neither. I'm very disappointed that money in politics is so bad that they're like, oh, these are the best people in America to lead us into the new era. Like right now is such a crucial time, right when AI is becoming so powerful, right when robotics are becoming so capable, right when we're on a precipice where a lot of jobs are potentially going to be, taken from our economy, when people are already struggling, when people are already working several jobs to make ends meet, when inflation has gone up, when people are not expecting a better standard of living than their parents, and that was not the case in the past. And yes, Biden did strengthen unions, thank goodness, and stronger unions has helped us in the past, but that is not enough. We are going to need someone who is willing to work for the people to be able to protect us and help us figure out this new economic climate, because I think that a universal basic dividend would be a very interesting thing to do, because it is based on collective output and collective work. So it does continue to incentivize work, just like, employment and income does. However, it does distribute that amongst the workers and gives them more money to spend, which ultimately helps the corporations, because when workers have more money to spend, they spend it, it goes to the corporations, then the corporations expand, hire more workers, our economy flourishes, everyone wins. But instead, the way that the economy has been run, we've dumped money on the top and said that it will trickle down on us, which we can see has not happened and does not work, because then instead of expanding these corporations and hiring more workers, these corporate entities do stock buybacks, so they inflate the worth of their own stock based on no actual metric. So then only the wealthiest get richer, and we have billionaires that are popping up all over. And yet the average person is absolutely struggling, and people are literally going hungry, and people are dying because they don't have health care. And the economic climate is really hostile to workers, and workers continue to shoulder the vast majority of the tax burden when we see billionaires admit that if companies paid what was, their corporate taxes, then workers wouldn't even have to pay a federal income tax at all. Someone's talking about how gas was really cheap under Trump. You know what I'm predicting now is that gas prices are going to go up right before the election. And actually, the reason that they're going to do that is Trump is pretty Gucci with Saudi Arabia, and actually Jared Kushner got a ton of money from them and manages a wealth fund for them, and they have a huge impact on our oil prices. And so obviously if you have the ability to influence oil prices, then you're, and it will help your buddy get elected, then that's probably going to happen. Now, there would be a way to actually insulate us from this, and we could actually ban the export of gas and of oil if we wanted to, and be actually energy independent. Yesterday, we were a huge producer, but what we do is we allow corporations to extract our oil and gas, and instead of keeping it in America, this is like a reverse tariff. We were talking about that earlier, and I doubt any of the people that were here earlier when I was talking about it are still the people that are here, because this is an ebb and flow type thing. But that's the sort of policy, while tariffs I don't think are very effective and hurt the consumer, a policy where you're limiting exports, that would actually give us energy independence and would actually insulate us from any of these gas price fluctuations. We do have reserves, and Biden, did break into them, but it's only but so much. And as long as we continue to allow all of this oil to leave our country, it's really not going to give us energy independence. So there's this common belief that if we drill more, then we can achieve energy independence. And that will never happen because we will continue to export it because it's corporate entities that are doing it. And the corporations are going to send it where they can make the most money. Not a single person was complaining about not being able to afford food under Trump. That is, I don't even know what to say because that's not, he actually cut food stamps. So people were not doing great with that. Now, inflation has been a problem, and we have seen that inflation has been a problem under Biden, and a huge reason that inflation has been such a problem is because corporate greed has been a problem, and there has been a massive increase in profits. There's been a massive increase in CEO salaries. There has been such an increase in money that has just been sucked up to the top out of the working family's purse. So yeah, the reality for working families, it sucks. And Biden hasn't done enough to address it. And he continues to not do enough to address it. But to say that Trump, the pandemic started this narrative of inflation that then companies were like, we're never going to get another opportunity like this. We'll blame our price increase on the pandemic. Oh no, it's inflation. We can't do anything. You can't be mad at us. Just give us the money. And they got away with it. Why this dude have earrings? Oh, you think I'm strong? You think I'm strong like a dude, huh? Actually, no, I don't mean to feed into stereotypes. The White House is the most expensive nursing home on the planet. It is. True that. Nothing can be said to defend this traitor and Congress. I'm not sure who you're talking about because we're getting failed across the board politically right now. Biden is the best president Ukraine has ever had. Biden's green energy deal is a scam. Water is a good regulated by the government. We didn't pass the Green New Deal. I don't know why people think we did. Biden went way beyond the pandemic with giveaway cash. Honestly, most of the pandemic relief was passed under Trump, remember? And I was down with a certain portion of it. Unfortunately, a lot was given to corporations because they're the ones who are lobbying the politicians. So they're the ones that, basically what corporations want tends to impact what is passed in our government a lot more than what the average person wants. But most of that pandemic spending, when you look at the amount that it contributed to inflation, at this point, they have actually realized that more of the inflation was caused purely by corporate price gouging and corporate greed and them using the narrative of inflation. So that is something that we have been able to run the numbers on. Also, we did go ahead and just print money to stop the stock market from going into free fall. And this was also, back when Trump was heading things up. So that is not a great idea. And everybody knows we don't just print a ton of money, and we printed it and we dumped it into the stock market to help the wealthiest people. So it's like government spending can be very, very useful when done in ways to help the average worker. But the way that we are currently going about government spending is we are giving it to the wealthiest individuals who are the ones with all the money to lobby the government. And I mean, that makes sense because that's how it's set up. A politician, very often the politician who raises more monies, the more I talk, the more Japanese it sounds. That's a throwback that nobody currently watching is going to appreciate. That was from the beginning of the stream. But water. I'm going through this water. But it's being dumped to the places that don't need it. And then the craziest thing is that these people who have extra money, right? Because they're not having to give a ton of money to, because their taxes are so low, they've had all these tax cuts. Then they actually loan money to the government, and then the government has to pay them interest. So instead of taxing them, they loan the money and they make money off of that. So it's insane. Oh, somebody said that I was fluent in Japanese. I did not mean that to talk about any sort of race, but I was making fun of the fact that people were saying I was talking too much. I apologize. I won't use that anymore. I guess the racial part of that went right over my head. Okay. Oh God, I don't know how I think I sent hearts somewhere because I'm still learning this live thing. If it was somewhere inappropriate, I apologize. Okay, currently Trump has been gone for 4 years. Yeah, I know that. We funded Israel in their apartheid state. Yep, that's true. Oh yeah, I did want to talk about how Trump was not better for the situation with Palestine. I know this is probably going to piss a lot of people off. I have a tendency to do that. But this is very important to continue to talk about because this is really, really impacting people in a big way. And the atrocities that we are seeing right now are significant. There are a ton of children and women who are dying, who are innocent, and we are watching war crimes happen. And so it needs to be talked about. So one of the reasons why Biden has been criticized fairly is that he has not flexed the muscle that he has available to ask Israel to be responsible in the way that they're acting. And we can look at Reagan and Bush. They said, hey, you're not going to get aid if you do X, Y, or Z. It immediately stopped. Biden's like, pretty please, can you be nice? I mean, that'd be super nice, please. I want you to be nice. It's like, okay, that you have more power than that. So a lot of people don't want to vote for Biden because he has continued to, support weapons and aid going to Israel while the government, I'm not talking about the people, while the government is behaving in a very, very irresponsible way towards a civilian population that has nothing, it doesn't have food, doesn't have water. I could go on and on. So a lot of people feel like anything would be better than Biden, but Trump actually did a lot of things that let us know that he might even be worse for this conflict. Look, isn't this terrible? They're both awful. So, Trump actually cut Palestinians out of the negotiations for the Abraham Accords. So that, took away some of the power that they could have been able to, influence policy with. He actually went and reorganized so he shut off the funding for one of the aid organizations to Palestinian refugees, which now Biden has done as well, because there is something that, came out claiming that certain members were like Hamas, even though the members in question, the ties were tenuous and they were like fired. So definitely no ties there, but, so both did ultimately cut it off. But, Trump did that before the October 7th excuse and before anything came out. He also recognized Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights region, which is a region that international law seems to agree was taken in a way that is against international law. Trump eliminated restrictions on using taxpayer dollars on the West Bank settlement projects, which is also something that is against international law. Also not good for the Palestinians. He also, he moved the American embassy to Jerusalem while actually shutting down this U.S. mission to Palestine that was in the same area. So he did many things that actually did take away from any sort of ability for Palestinians to be able to enter into the conversation and he was not good for Palestinians either. So even though it is very, very difficult to watch the way that Biden is behaving and to know that Biden could absolutely insist that Israel modifies their policies by withholding aid. Trump is not better. And so when we look at all of these other aspects and we look at the way that Trump literally wants to reorganize our government and get rid of merit-based employees and 50,000 government employees, like there are so many unintended ripple consequences that could come from that. And as someone who's furious at the DNC for taking away my primary, who is pretty much like, let the world burn. I will not vote for somebody if you don't give me my primary, you know? In light of all of this, I am very, very reluctantly feeling like I'm going to have to vote for Biden, despite the fact that he is being very disappointing right now. Okay, there has been so many new messages. Let me count. Okay, Project 25 will be a problem. Yes, Project 2025 is definitely concerning, and that is a way to implement loyalists. But the scariest part is the Schedule F reclassification of government employees to remove the protections against firing them purely for political reasons and putting in people that are just loyal to the current administration. Project F is a terrifying proposition. And Trump actually did put it into place and Biden removed it. So it is something that we know that he will do. And last time there were a lot of things that Trump promised that he didn't do. So some people are like, well, you know, he's saying things that are scary, but like, you know, is he going to accomplish it? Is he going to be able to? Well, this time, maybe. Because the apparatus behind him has figured out a lot of ways to basically use the unitary executive theory to make sure that anything the president says goes. And when you reclassify government employees and you get rid of 50,000 merit-based employees and put in loyalists, you don't have to pass something outlawing, say, certain medications. You just have to get your people in the FDA who are now appointed for loyalty to say they're dangerous. Bam. You don't even have to pass legislation to get your policy goals. And there is a huge push that will allow a lot of regulatory agencies to make decisions based on loyalty instead of on expertise and facts. And we're going to see all sorts of government agencies experience massive turmoil. And we will also see that a lot of people who are very talented, who are very smart, will be replaced by people who are loyal. And you might like or hate the whatever administration that starts with, but then it will flip. And once we open that can of worms, once we give the president the power to just replace all of these regulatory agencies with yes men, this is a democracy ending level event. And I do not say that lightly because I really, really hate how politicians use fear against us to force us to vote. And if this was not such a terrifying proposition, this Schedule F reclassification of government employees away from a merit-based system, that is how we make idiocracy/autocracy happen. You know, we are the oldest democracy. Democracies have fallen before, and our institutions are not as strong as we think they are, especially if we take out all the people that have that ability to shepherd us in between administrations and to be the ones who have the expertise to keep things consistent. You know, I don't need all of our bridges, even though that clearly we're kind of sucking with that right now, but I don't need the people who are overseeing the bridges to get switched out every administration. That is dangerous. That does not help us. We need a level of consistency in our government. And this is highly concerning. Okay. You can possibly vote for any Democrat. Understand when they start a war, this country has to fight. Republic. I did talk about the Republic versus democracy thing earlier. We're actually both. There's a lot of legal, there are a lot of legal videos online you can watch It's not a one or the other thing. That's like a line. Okay. So it's already happened. That's what Trump wants to change. So Schedule F did happen under Trump. It was removed under Biden. Schedule F reclassifies government employees to allow them to be appointed outside of a merit-based system. So that is the concern. I'm popping. That's what I'm thinking about this video. I don't know what that is. Propaganda. I mean, if you give me a specific, I'll address it. RFK's family does not support him. He agrees with a lot of what Trump says. Yes. And he had a worm in his brain. And mercury poisoning as well. God, like what a great group of people we have to choose from. He wants to remove the loyalists that are already in. You think the DOJ is not weaponized. I do agree that the DOJ has a lot of concerning features and is very, very unfair to really poor people. If you go in front of the court, you are screwed. And then I don't know if anybody's watched the Jinx, the Robert Durst thing, but you see how like he cut up a dude and then got away with it because he had a great lawyer. It's like money can buy you a lot in our justice system. Our justice system is so broken. And right now, our government actually is allowed to force prisoners to work and make money off of it. So it's essentially legalized slave labor that is being rented out to corporations for like 15 cents an hour or something like that. And that is just wild. So don't think for a second that I am not highly critical of the structures that are currently in place. However, if Trump only wanted to remove loyalists, he would not have to change to Schedule F to say that merit-based employment is no longer important. Merit-based employment would not matter. The loyalists, if people were really just loyal politically, then that would be something that he could do outside of this reclassification. The reclassification allows more loyalists to come in, which you might like under Trump, but you might not like the next time. So having a merit-based system for government employees, while yes, there is definitely institutional rot and there are new laws that could be passed to help make different institutions better. Reclassifying employees outside of a merit-based employment system is not the way to remove people when you feel that when there's corruption. That's not the way you go about it. That's what you do when you want more loyalists. And I know that's hard to hear, because if you're hearing the opposite, that's going to feel like it's ripping apart your identity. And I know that's hard. Work there and breathe the dirty air and drink the dirty water. I don't know about that, what that means. Trump wants power, period. That's all he cares about. Unfortunately, I think that power is really intoxicating. And I think that we have combined money, which is intoxicating, with power. And so the lobbying that goes on is so financially coercive already that we have people who don't want to let go of that money and that power, and that go into government service for the wrong reasons. And that's why we shouldn't let our politicians be in the stock market, because they're making decisions and laws to influence the stock market. They're getting insider information that if we found out about, we could go to prison for insider trading. But they're allowed to say, no, I knew that information and I just so happened to be planning to do all those trades. And they're allowed to do that. But the average person, same information, would go to prison. So people are incentivized to go into government work for all the wrong reasons. And so it is important to pass laws to constrain that. There is a lot of corruption, and that's why it's difficult when somebody talks about corruption. It can feel like a breath of fresh air and you want to believe them because you know the corruption is there. And it's also really hard to deal with government corruption with legislatures because they write the laws. So it's like, are they really going to be regulating themselves? It's a tough one. Okay. So Biden has been trying to be where he is for 40 years. Wake up. Oh yeah, not a Biden stan. Not at all. Damn. Oh, sorry. Sometimes when I'm reading, I'm trying to be PG. People are saying, get help. Getting help is always good. There are two choices in the next election, Biden or Trump. That's it. Yeah, and that's super unfortunate. And I don't know if you're referring to when I was talking about third parties or anything like that, Mr. Roboto. Did I say that right? Anyways, is that like Mr. Robot? I love that show. It was so good. So when I was thinking about voting third party, it was a protest vote. And I was fully aware of that. I did not think that it would actually happen. People are talking about losing civil rights. We are losing rights constantly, unfortunately, and this TikTok ban is also unconstitutional. And even though the court should strike it down, I don't think they will. And there's a lot of things that are really, really disappointing politically right now. I think he has enough money not to have to worry about power. Oh, I think you're talking about Trump. So. So Trump is bleeding and hemorrhaging money right now because of all these court cases and everything. So that's that. His appeal, I understood though, because he was saying, hey, I'm the one who's bribing the politicians. I don't need those bribes. Of course, then he did turn around and accept campaign contributions. He did turn around and he's accepted money from foreign governments. His son-in-law has accepted a lot of money from Saudi Arabia. Like this is not, and then all the people from foreign, governments that were actually staying in his hotels, so indirectly giving money. It's both, but I'm not saying that Biden is innocent. I think that Biden is a war criminal. I think that Biden very possibly sexually assaulted someone when he was younger. I think that Biden is losing his mind. I think that Biden is not stepping up to meet the moment. And I think that Biden, who knows what the next thing that's going to come out of his mouth. He seems a little bit racist, and he's concerning. He's concerning in many ways. I like what he's done for unions. I don't like what he's done with the Palestine thing. I could go on. Hunter is a nightmare. He's a crackhead. He lies. He got that job that he didn't deserve. But we also see Ivanka got a bunch of patents that were approved as soon as that she had been trying to get approved, that went through when Trump became president. It is a nepotism thing in the political sphere, and I don't like the whole whataboutism that goes on, because it's like I can't get pulled over for speeding and say, hey, did you know serial killers exist? So I don't like the fact that very often when you try and talk about the negatives about one politician, that you have to bring up the others. But I feel like that in certain areas it is important just to be like, yes, this is a problem. The nepotism, the corruption, the accepting money, the accepting bribes is a huge problem. Biden has got a ton of dark money. So has Trump. They're both getting it. They're both influenced. They're both bought and paid for. So I just think that to talk about one without the other is in a way misleading. So I'm not saying that either is okay because the other is doing. They're both not okay, and they both should not be accepted. And I want us to pass laws constraining this sort of corruption and excess. And they are both highly corrupt in so many ways. And I mean, Trump, when you look at all the different issues he had with the legal system even before he became president. Like, he was notorious. He didn't pay his workers. He hired illegal immigrants. Like, Trump is not the person that he's painted to be in his media sphere. But Biden is not the person that he's painted to be in his media sphere. Biden is mentally falling apart. Biden has accepted lots of money and has been in the political zeitgeist and has been, in the depths of this corruption for a really long time. Biden appointed a political actor to his cabinet after the dude, well, I think it was after the dude, it was at a sketchy sort of time period, bought some of Hunter Biden's paintings for way too much money. Like, the corruption is there. And I think that it's very fair to point that out across the board. Okay, let me catch up. Funny how Trumper forgot his 14.7 unemployment rate. Biden is falling apart. Yes, all of that. Yes, it's too late to vote. I don't know what that means. Funny how Trumper forgot that he signed the largest spending bill. That's true. Biden has a great team. Some of his team is solid. The labor side of things, I'm happy with. Some of his team, not so much. But look at what happens when you give tax breaks to big businesses. More jobs are created. So that is, okay, so as somebody who went to business school, that's the kind of like what we've believed in for a while, is that if you give companies more money, they will hire more workers, they'll create more jobs. And that makes logical sense. I get why people, believe that. But what we've seen, especially recently, is companies, when they get more money, they buy their own stock, which gives more money to their shareholders. It gives more money to their CEOs, because a lot of CEOs get paid in stock options because income is taxed really high, but stock is not taxed super high. So it's a way to avoid as much of a tax burden, and it's a way to get more money. So basically, we're seeing that instead of choosing to expand their businesses, companies are just trying to make more money, and they don't really care if that involves creating jobs. Now, if you want a company to create more jobs, you want to have a higher demand. If there's more demand, the company will then hire more workers to reach that demand. They will expand their capacity and they will grow. Now, the best way to increase demand is to put more money in the hands of the workers and the average human. Then they will spend their money at that company, which will create more demand. And then we will see that company create more jobs. So I think that it's very important to do things from the bottom up when it comes to stimuli. And so when you look at the Trump tax cuts, the ones that were for the average citizen and the workers, those expired, and the tax cuts that were for the really, really wealthy individuals and for corporate interests, those did not. So we see that it's the wrong type of economic stimulus. Oh my gosh, I cannot keep up. People talking about making money for small, but I think they're talking amongst themselves. Supporting small businesses is so good, so fantastic. You must have gone to technical college for your business knowledge. I went to a state university, and I disagree with a lot of their economics because their economic models were based on older models, and we actually have seen, and in almost like real life laboratory experiments, we've been able to see how the economy is impacted when we've passed all of these recent things that are basically allowing companies to make all of the money and that are not stimulating the economy from the bottom. So we've run the experiment and we can see the results. So business school will tell you differently, and they're wrong. So, but yeah, I went to a state university. We could not find in 2020 we couldn't find, okay, talking about supply chain issues. That is actually another really interesting thing, because that's another impact of choosing to value companies over the consumer. So a lot of companies, in order to make the most money that they possibly can, they manage inventory by getting it at the very last second, because then they don't have excess inventory they have to store. They don't have excess inventory they have to pay taxes on. So they get it at the very last second. But that means a baby little hiccup in the supply chain, or a big hiccup like a pandemic, is going to screw up the supply chain, and it's going to have severe, inflationary impacts. And that's what kicked off the inflation narrative that companies then took advantage of and lied and said they had to raise their prices when they didn't so they can make more money, blah, 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 blah. But basically that is another issue that we have run into, because companies are only trying to maximize their own profits. And it's the Wild West when it comes to regulations for corporate entities, because they have a lot of money and bribery is legal in the United States. Okay. The corporations lied because they're greedy. Yes. And the government shut down and did not let them work. So the initial inflation, I'm gonna have to stop when I run out of water. I've been talking for a while. So the initial inflation was caused for many different reasons. We had inflationary pressures from Ukraine, with the war, with it being kind of like the grain basket. So that had an impact on inflation. We had issues with Russia being a huge supplier of natural gas. We had issues with supply chains because corporations were managing their inventory, getting it at the very last second. We had issues with shutting down, the government, and we had issues with the narrative that came along with it. So these initial inflationary pressures that are going to come when you have a higher demand for goods that are not coming in at the same rate because of the pandemic, and not just the United States, there are a lot of other countries that shut down, and, China shut down production, and we get a lot of things from China, so we had inflationary pressures that then companies said, oh, I am never going to get a better opportunity to raise my prices and blame it on something outside of our control. And very often consumers, they literally didn't, sit and listen to these earnings calls. So they didn't know that at the same time that the corporations were going, poor us, we had to raise our prices. They're bragging to their shareholders, hey, our profits are higher than ever. And profits don't rise just because you had to raise your prices because inputs cost more. Prices rise, and if your inputs cost more and then you keep that same level of profit, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about where they raised their prices more than they had to, so there was an excess of profit. And we can see now that profit percentages went through the roof. CEO pay went through the roof. So that really kicked off the narrative. The fear of inflation became this like self-perpetuating nightmare. And then we had the Fed try to respond to inflation by hiking up interest rates, which inflated the costs of all of our mortgages and any borrowing that we'd done. So that was just another pain for the consumer to bear. Okay, your input was going to the sea. If Trump was president, you'd be blaming him for inflation. Be honest. Actually, no. No, not at all. I think that blaming, you can critique the response that a president has to inflation. There are things, I really wanted a windfall profits tax, and Biden could have tried to implement that with the help of Congress. Price controls, there's so many things that could have been done, and he really didn't do those things. So I absolutely do critique his response to inflation, but inflation is rarely the fault of the president. So someone said I am anti-capitalist. So I the guy who invented capitalism said that it could not work without proper guardrails. And what America has done is say, screw the guardrails, we're wild west, and decided that we should have freedom for the businesses and not freedom for the workers, not freedom for the average person. So I have not settled on an economic model that I think is ideal yet. I kind of have developed my own, and it's based around individual freedom as opposed to corporate freedom. And I think it's just because I don't really like being in a camp, because I feel like when I subscribe to a camp or an ideology, it makes me think less about it. And I'd rather try and look at things on an issue by issue basis. Are there certain areas where market forces have positive effects? Sure. Luxury goods. Are there certain areas where market forces are ridiculous? Yes, because if you look at healthcare, that is inelastic in its demand, which means that if you're going to die, you will literally end up paying all the money you have to not die. So because demand is not elastic, it means that it doesn't have normal market forces. So when you try and put something like healthcare into a free market, which our market is very far from free. It has a million different controls on it. It's just the wrong ones. But when you put that into a free market framework, you just have things fall apart, and you have people come in like the insurance companies, where the only way they make money is to deny you coverage, and they just inflate our costs. They add literally nothing. They give us no benefit. And then we believe that we will have less choice if we get rid of the middleman there. And we can look at other countries and we can see that there are models that have worked better, but people are very scared of the idea of losing our free market. And so they get very concerned at the idea of restructuring healthcare in a way that works better and is cheaper for everyone, and that we've seen modeled in other countries with mixed economies. Every economy, by the way, is a mixed economy. We literally have, for example, most people like the idea of Social Security. Well, the secret is it is a socialized program. There are a lot of elements of different economic structures in all of the different countries right now. We really don't have examples of pure capitalism, pure like socialism, pure communism. It's just not really something that you can find a real world example of. So I definitely don't like our current economic system in the way that it is today. And I think that we can put some really good guardrails on there that can make the average person more free. Oh my goodness. Okay. I would have been better off taking the money and investing in myself. I don't know. Other countries don't have a wait time for the ER, months to get a doctor appointment. I mean, wait times do seem to be a problem across most countries, but in America, if you have more money, you have a lower wait time. Whereas in other countries, they try to go by need. So if you're like dying, then you have a shorter wait time than if it's like a checkup. And I'd rather do it that way. I'd rather it not be something you can buy. I just don't think that's right. Someone said, can you make sense? If you ask me a question, I will answer it. As long as I can keep up with all of these. Problem with capitalism is when one company gets greedy and takes control of much of the supply. Yes. And right now, because we don't have the proper guardrails, monopolies are pretty much guaranteed. Look at Amazon. Amazon is so terrible to its workers, and I use Amazon, and I just don't know of a company that has as many products that is as convenient and priced like that and quick. I mean, there's not really a competing business. If you know of one, please tell me, because I do feel guilty about it. But that's what happens. And we have allowed mergers to get larger and larger. And that is another way to deal with inflation. Because when you look at Uber, for example, so they had really, really low prices, right? They put most of the taxi cab companies out of business. Then they jacked their prices up. So now it's really expensive to get an Uber, like crazy expensive to get an Uber. But there's not as many taxi cab. A lot of them have gone out of business because they had that strategy where they had a smaller market share, and so they let things be really cheap. And then now that they've kind of taken over, they're like, okay, now we're going to charge the consumer more. And that happens pretty consistently across industries. That's a very common strategy. It's so expensive to get an Uber. Yeah, it's insane. So I am a clinician with money. It's not a problem in other countries. I've been in other countries. Awesome. It does seem like other countries are doing better. I'm just trying to be fair and say that, like, a lot of countries, I do hear at least individuals complaining about certain wait times for certain things when in the medical sphere. And I just think it's better. It's definitely better. Bullet Tooth Tony is saying remove the lobbyist. Absolutely. Republicans stay there for something and change their minds. That seems to be happening with the free speech thing. Problem with capitalism is when okay, cool. All right, CEOs make $24,000 an hour while their employees make $24 an hour. We need to make raises, or we need to raise wages. Okay, I've been talking a while, so I'm gonna wrap this up. And I just ran out of water, so I'm not gonna be able to talk as well anymore. But it has been so amazing. If there's like any super burning thing that someone has to say before I go, I will try. Oh, Bianca almost died from kidney issues, and then the hospital charged thousands. See, that's insane. That's so insane. Here in Asheville, we literally have an ER that was taken over by this for-profit company that is taking over lots of different hospitals and businesses, like, medical environments. And they started doing really bad things for staffing. And so the quality of care went down. They were making more mistakes. And the government actually ended up pulling money from them because they were making so many mistakes and providing such terrible care. And this was because they were cutting staff, they were cutting corners. It was just because a company took over to try and make more money. And I actually took someone there, and we were there literally all night and couldn't even be seen. I've never seen anything like it. I really should make a video on that. There's so many things to make. But it is true that now that we have put these money incentives into healthcare, we have companies that are trying to maximize profit instead of take care of the individual patient. And having a different set of goals is not a positive thing. So money is corrupting many different spheres. And someone's talking about a workers' revolution. Man, every time I try to go, people say, yeah, hospitals are a business. They're taught to prolong lives, not save them. Yeah, that's so interesting, especially with like cancer care. We can go on and on. Tina Marie, I definitely hope to see you in future streams or on my page, because you have added some really, really great points here. And Bianca too, absolutely. Just really, really great points. I almost just want y'all to be able to talk, but I have been talking for a very long time. Here, I'm curious. I learned today how to see how long I've been talking. I've been talking 2 hours, so I'm tired. So I'm going to go. You all have been amazing. Thank you so much. I hope you have a lovely rest of your evening. It's been marvelous. Bye.